Well, howdy, kids. How are you? um, thanks for joining. Just a little bit of noodling going on there, as I often now am wont to do. Um, let's see. We got the looks like the usual suspects here. Hi, Megsy and Sue, Red Fox, and oh my, we got Janet and let's see. I gotta move this up here so I can see. Hey, look at that. I can see. Get Shreked. Oh, Winston Stubble Nuts. Hey. Stubble Nuts. I like it. Ah, Candace and, let's see, Celestial Creation. Kevlar and Billing Tanao. And let's see here. Okay, so. Yes. You got her a Steinway. Hey, that's. That's a good gift. Oh, hey, Bunny. Hey, welcome. All right, guys. So I'm glad you're here. I have. Well, we're gonna do some weird stuff today, I guess. But I have. Let's see. So. It's your first time here. Well, hi, welcome. That'll be odd. No, okay, so as I'm kind of. I guess I got started here at the last minute, and so I kind of cut it close, and so I got to get in the right mindset here. But basically, where I wanted to start is that I have always encouraged people to. Take up a relationship with their creator on their own, right? That my view is that religion really is a means and method of control. I think that becomes apparent after a while. That even if the ideas are good, and many are. The premise of what seems that many religions are founded on, right, is some sort of self improvement, to do something to make yourself better or to improve the world. But always this does include some sort of self involvement. Some means by which through discipline or ritual or some means you're going to go through a type of apotheosis, or you're going to become a greater person, maybe achieve a sort of Christ consciousness, if you will, through meditation or through some means like that. And it's been observed over time throughout history that it is very difficult even with those who are very well disciplined. It is very difficult to make substantial change in your thought processes, in your behaviors, simply by willpower. And well, howdy back at you, Miss Megsy, and everyone. Again, I'm super appreciative for everybody being here and everybody's support. And we had a great time this morning. At least I did. A lot of love going on in the room. And it was just exactly what I want to see. To me, the nature of love itself is really written by the Creator, and He is they, I guess would be probably more accurate to say, are the author and very definition of love. And that is the only real experience that's the only real model that we have for it. There are many things that appear to be written into the hearts of man. For example, we expect somehow that that things should be fair, right? That things should go smoothly, and yet the evidence strongly suggests everything other than that. And yet we do have, it seems, an expectation that things be fair and right, and the world just doesn't seem to work that way. Most people are terrified of death and the unknown, and yet everything dies. And so, yet it's been said that eternity is written within the heart of man, and it does seem that way. That we're meant for eternity and to live forever, and yet certainly that doesn't seem to be the way. And so what makes that, right? What is how do we know? I often point to looking at nature, right? And we can say that certainly we say that we see the evidence of a creator in nature by the way that it's so perfectly well designed, and certainly from my observation, I see that where we live is not evidence of evolution or something increasing, but rather it is perfection broken. That it was at one time perfect, and something happened. And to me, looking back through the evidence and some of the ancient writings, that appears to be the case. There appears to be evidence for that, and for Creator. And again, as I continue to look, it does seem again through observation, and I think I'm not the only one who has come to these views, that at least much of what is described within some of the ancient writings is to a degree accurate, in that it gives us a sense of this idea that we are created, we're in a realm, we are created by a being that is perfect, and there are other beings that are outside our immediate perception, some of which are rebellious and have hatred toward both the Creator and His creation, that being us, and doing everything possible to separate us. And we see evidence of this, I think, those of us especially within this community, the truth community, or whatever you want to call it. Pardon me. We look around and we see the evidence that those who are in charge are behaving in a way that is strongly suggestive, that is trying to separate us from the natural world and lead us into an artificial world of their own creation, and that they also seem to want and in fact need our consent to do so. They cannot simply force it upon us. Now, they do some things to force it from time to time, but it also seems that they really are looking to get our consent. They want us to agree to it, and that is the best way for them to achieve it, and for whatever purposes. It does seem that they play by some weird, at least, rule book, which includes the ideas that they have to tell us in advance what they're doing, revelation of the method. But again, often those are oblique ways that they don't directly just say, "Hey, we're gonna, screw you over. Do you mind?" But they place it as a joke. They put it in, RV likes to say, "Truth in the movies, lies in the news," and that's certainly a phrase that I've adopted, because there's truth there. So, we see evidence of this. And I have said many times, when people ask, one of the first things they ask is, well, why would they lie? Why would they do these things? And I often say that, to me, is not necessarily a great place to start, because it's often difficult to define divine motives of others, even when you are, have firsthand evidence in the experience. Why would somebody cheat on their spouse? Right? You can come up with justifications, but ultimately it is difficult sometimes to know the exact motivations of people. But what you can do, certainly, is observe their behaviors. And this is something that when my daughter began dating, I told her very specifically. I said, "You're going to meet people who are very, suave, and they're going to be very charming, and they say, just ignore everything they say. Truly, ignore everything that they say, and look only at what they do. And they'll look for excuses for their behavior. They'll, and you'll want to excuse some of their behavior away." But ultimately, ignore what they say and look at their behavior. And she, for the most part, did do that, and has come out ahead for that. And I would say the same thing for us. Like, ignore what they say, because they're lying. Watch their behavior. And when we watch their behavior, you can certainly see this, for example, in politics. They promise everything and instead do exactly the opposite, and then blame the other side. And I have often said that in our two-party system here in the United States, it seems, from my perspective, that the primary platform of both political parties is simply to prove the other unfit to hold office. And in that one single regard, they're both spectacularly accurate. So I would again just urge you that all things, ignore very much, especially at the outset, what people say, and look instead at what they do. And you can get a good sense of what's going on if you do that, right? Just ignore what they say and go with what they do. Are they trustworthy? Do they do what they say? And in this case, we can certainly say that those who are in charge of things don't, do what they say, but they lie constantly. And what of, yeah, exactly. Believe none of what you hear and very little of what you say. That's great advice, right? So. And certainly none of what you read in the newspaper, right? Excuse me. If you, I got the Rona. No, I'm just kidding. No, I got seasonal allergies, and so it just kind of fills me up with schmutz, and so I get all kinds of mucus and stuff going on. It's delightful. Gotta love it. All right, so. In any case, so as we look around and we take a look at what we see going on around us, it does seem as though the powers that ought not be, or the PIC, the people in charge, they make specific effort to, make fun and mock things that are actually true. And so those of you who have come to investigate, for example, the nature of the place that we live and begin to challenge the heliocentric model and find out that it is, it's a lie, which is a big one. But what they do is they mock the truth. And so take that a little bit further, you've got Obama saying, we don't have time for meeting of the Flat Earth Society. He said that like 3 or 4 times. That was one of my early cues of like, what is he talking about? Why would he say that? And that was even before I looked into it. I think it was probably 2012, 2013 when I heard him say that. I was like, what is going on here? And it was at the end of 2014 before I really began to look seriously into the idea that the world may be misdescribed. And boy, did that lead down some interesting rabbit holes. So yes, it's running around pantsless. Yes, I am pants free at the moment. It's true. I'm on natural. I've said before, I will just call this the naked truth. All right. And so, any thought of the firmament being the transition layer between the physical and the ethereal, thus creating a barrier that closes our system and the physical may not penetrate? Yeah, in fact, Cyber Sully, if you were to listen to yesterday's Unintended Consequences episode with Cammy Nodell, we describe toward the end, we kind of do that Obama voice. No, I could go back and do Bill Clinton even way back in the day. I feel your pain. American people, they understand. I feel your pain. Sorry, I didn't mean to get distracted. The chat is sometimes distracting. I try to keep an eye on it as I go through. Yeah, right. Flat Earth Society. Again, that's the first thing if you Google search Flat Earth, it's going to come up with Flat Earth Society. That'll tell you that's where they want you to go, because they're not ever going to tell you the truth, and they're going to mock those things that are true. Well, what you find is that they like to mock Christianity, that like to mock Jesus. So again, anytime that they tell you something, you shouldn't look at something, that's a pretty fair. It should be fair game, right? Should be something that you run right out. Accidentally turning on the webcam, yeah, that would be horrifying. I noticed that this morning I did turn on the webcam for a few minutes while I was playing the keyboard, and I did have a bathrobe going just in case, and I saw that I could see that. I'm like, I'm glad I wore that. And so. In any case, anything that they tell you to make fun of or to mock or to ignore is probably fair game to look at, right? It's usually a big red flag there. This isn't. Go look at that, right? So yeah, with the thing with Cammy Nodell, again, we were talking about electromagnetic declination lines, taking a look at the idea of how it lays out and the map that she's been drawing, that it comes into look at a kind of octagonal, the shape of the way things are laid out looks like a big turtle, El Tortuga. And then the old, the old mythos about the world being on the back of a turtle. And in fact, we've been passing stuff back and forth since yesterday morning. We've been passing stuff back and forth, and just can't let it go. One good joke deserves another. Yeah, don't get me started. Yeah, forget about it. Bada bing over here. Megsy says, do the freaking mob voice. You know what I mean? Bada bing. At some point, I'll have to show you. I'll post a video I did a long time ago. I did a video for a church, and actually two versions of it, and called "You Don't Say," and it was basically a video made from the worst. The worst gospel movie I could find, and I just did overdubbed the voices and did it differently, and it was all full of all sorts of crazy things that Jesus would not say, right? Like you guys, he was like in one version he was a mobster, right? Like, you guys freaking disgust me. What are you doing over here? Yeah. Anyway, I'll post that sometime. You'll get a kick out of it. People will be like, "You're gonna burn straight in hell for that." Well, yeah, I know. So, okay, where were we? So this idea that they lead you astray, right? They're going to lie to you. They're going to lie directly to your face, and they're going to point you in a direction that says, make fun of those things, right? I think we all, when we very first were exposed, for example, to the idea, oh, come on. Do jive at this time? Come on, man! You're gonna get me in trouble. It'd be like doing blackface. I will get people will get all over me for that. Mm-hmm. But thanks, Bunny. I appreciate that. Globusters is always first. You know what I mean? Bada bing, he's first in our hearts, first in our minds, like that over there. All right. Forget about it. Okay, so you guys just going to have me goofing off all day. And this is supposed to be such a serious thing. So when, I think all of us had the experience when we first looked at the idea of the earth being, flat. And we were like, are you kidding me? Like, what's going on here? And it seemed like the most ridiculous thing. Well, it's because they taught us to think that. And, when you break it all down and say, yeah, the world is run by a bunch of shape-shifting reptilians beating babies, yeah, that sounds pretty crazy too. But when you look at it really close, there might be, some weirdly some truth to that. So again, don't get me started. But I think the bottom line here is, right, that those who are in charge, the PIC, right, or the powers that ought not be, they try to lead us astray. And they're, again, not above certainly lying, but they do want to get your consent through every possibility. Every opportunity to get you to accept something that is not true. And to that extent, I think the same is true, especially of religion, that they co-opted it. Certainly, you can take a look at the preeminent, quote, Christian religion, if you will, which is the Roman Catholic Church, which has done everything, insofar as I can tell, to do quite the opposite of what Scripture says. And again, insofar as I can tell, I'll just say as far as I can tell, since he's in the chat today. If you haven't checked out his channel, you should go do that. He's got some great material there, as well as some music as well. But they have done everything possible to turn it into a mockery, and they make it into basically a Luciferian religion. And so they're flipping everything over upside down, backwards on its head. That's pretty much everything. We're in an upside down world. This is exactly precisely what's spoken of in Scripture. Those who call woe unto those who call evil good and good evil, right? And they call black white. They flip everything over upside down. So, here we're left with this thing where, people, they have this experience, right, being exposed to the idea, again, of religion. And I have often said, probably every show you've heard me say this, the biggest obstacle to Christianity are Christians. And, it's only 99% that give the rest a bad name, because they're following a belief system. They're following traditions of man, without benefit of actually being exposed to or becoming in relationship with the Creator. And then here we have this whole other group of people who, again, come in a very different direction, and ultimately, even many of them coming from a place of atheism, which I find to be more anti-theism. It's not that they don't believe; they just don't like God. They don't like the idea for a variety of reasons, and I think one of them is misapprehension about who He is. Right, so we're given this idea, a big, long bearded, old white guy who's angry and jealous and arbitrary, mean, goes around smiting people, and so you go, yeah, it's that's not anybody that I'd be interested in having a relationship with. Well, again, my personal experience is that they are anything but that. But how would you know, right, if you didn't take the opportunity to find out and ask? And so here we get into this sort of quandary where I will happily tell you my experience, right, and what I see. But as is the same with all of truth, I would say don't take my word for it, right? Don't trust me. Go find out for yourself. And so how would you know? Right? How would you know if you didn't do it for yourself? And so I have often encouraged people to find out for themselves. And again, my perception, my perspective on the Bible, for example, is that it is primarily, again, there's some things in there that are, again, seem questionable. And of course, being in the hands of the Jesuits for a very long time, I would suspect that they did some nefarious things. But again, if I was them and I was trying to do something, to get people to distrust the truth, I would leave it as intact as possible. Put a couple of things in there that would be then easy to point out and go, see, it can't be trusted. Throw the whole thing out, and so you don't have to run around putting out all the fires. You just discredit the whole thing in one swell swoop, as it were. So, but my look at it is that it's largely written by people who had an extraordinary encounter with a supernatural being that blew their fucking minds, and they took extraordinary measures to record it. But they also, in many cases, tried to infer what was going on to the best of their ability, and as often we are, when dealing with someone who is much bigger than we are, we're mistaken. Like children are often under the mistaken view and misapprehension that their parents don't like them when they discipline them. You hate me. You want me to clean my room. Right? It's not because the parent hates the child. It's because the parent wants the child to grow and be responsible. And children don't like that. So they have a misapprehension, a mistaken view of what the intentions are. And I find this to be true in many cases, especially in the Old Testament, and it'll say something like, and the Lord smote him. He was wroth and he smote him. Okay, really? Or did he just, die an untimely death and you were kind of pleased about that and thought that the guy deserved a little comeuppance? Could be, right? So to that effect, I'm very cautious about those things when people say, this is what God said or whatever. I'm pretty cautious about that because, again, you got to take their word for it. And I've come, for reasons not to trust people. I think you guys have can feel that. So here we get to this place where, again, I encourage people I find the nature of Scripture and the Bible to be an invitation. It's what I would consider a love letter, right? It's an invitation to come into relationship with this being. And so I have often encouraged people just to say, hey, just and don't listen to me. Don't take my word for it. Ask him yourself, right? That's a great place to start. Although here's what I've heard from many people, not many, some of late, who have said, I want that real bad, and I feel like I've tried, like I really badly wanted this, and I wish, everything from I wish he'd just show up in a dream, right, and somehow reveal himself or show. And I feel like God is ghosting me. Right, like not listening, and in some ways, they feel like even it's not just nothing there, but there's like a nothingness there, like they feel as though they're being rejected, and I don't know what to say about that. Well, I have never known Dad to reject the willing heart and the contrite spirit and those who really want that. On the other hand, I have no reason to doubt people when they say that they really have asked and tried, that they didn't get anything back and they got just silence. So I don't have reason to doubt their sincerity, but I didn't know what to make of that. And so recently, as a result of several of these very open, honest tales of I have asked and I got nothing, so so I asked Dad about that, and normally what I usually expect to get when I do that is either some radio silence, or generally the answer is something to the effect of, "It's not your story. It's none of your business, Dan. It's not your walk. Let them work it out, and everything will be all right." And mostly I'm okay with that. Most of the time, I realize that he's not very quick to answer the questions of why, or things that are really none of my business. I've learned that most of my interaction with him has to do specifically with him changing the nature of my heart, and me learning to love both myself and others. And Winston says, "I've never not felt the Creator, and I've ignored the Creator and paid the price." That's been my experience, Winston. I've always been aware of the Creator, and other presences as well, unfortunately. But I did have a very uneasy standoff, I guess I would say, for a number of years. Just said, he knows where I'm at. And I wouldn't disrespect him or anything, but I just didn't have. I didn't feel like I could go there because I was under a misapprehension of what it meant to follow. I thought I would turn into Ned Flanders and be some kind of asshole. I'm smoking something. Yes, I was smoking cigarettes. I admit it. If you want me to smoke something else, I got a little vape kit right here. There we go. It's a little vape kit. Yes, the cardinal bird. Well, yes, Megsy, so I think that is a story for another time. But at this time, I wanted to get those. I specifically invited some of the people here who had said that they were smoking a ham. There you go. But to invite those. And so Bunny says, "I felt them. I just thought they were a demiurge," right? So again, if you're uncertain, especially if you're aware that you're dealing with something that's unseen and supernatural, I think there's a natural tendency to be a little bit afraid. I know that my first experience in dealing with Dad specifically, and again, I identify them and recognize them as different individuals, so I often say them rather than just he. I identify them and relate to them differently, and Dad shows up probably least of all very directly, but is I would say probably the scariest. I was like, holy shit. I was terrified. I thought he was going to kill me, because it's certainly intimidating. I give it that. And every time in Scripture, somebody from that side shows up, the first thing they say is, "Be not afraid." Right? Don't be afraid. And there's, I think, a good reason for that. But again, I have never known these guys, these people, Mom, Dad, J-Bro. I've never known them to reject someone out of hand who had a willing heart. And I will say I don't know specifically what when people say that they asked for God to show up or whatever. Again, I don't know whether it was perhaps a bit of a challenge, like, hey, if you just hey, you show up over here, then then we're good. I'll do that, right? It's like the old joke about you got a Catholic and a Baptist and a Jew who are talking about how they tithe, and the Baptist says, well, I give 10%, I give whatever. I give 10% of my income to God, and the Catholic guy says, yeah, well, I draw a circle around me, and I throw my money up in the air, and whatever lands inside the circle I keep, and whatever lands outside the circle I give to God. And the Jew says, I do a similar thing. Oi, I throw my money up in the air, and whatever God wants, He keeps. Oi, forget about it. Yeah, so... Yeah, but a little bit of a challenge there, right? Like, hey, if you just show up and show me some kind of supernatural thing, then I'll be on board with that. That's specifically what Jesus said when people asked for a sign, right? He said, "This generation, you want a sign." Sorry, I'm having a delicious shake here. I didn't make coffee today. I made a delicious strawberry and cherry shake with Tillamook ice cream. It's delicious. So that sense of challenge, right? Like, prove it. That may be part of the issue. So I asked Dad about this. I said, what about these folks who are saying, and I believe them, that they've asked, what? They asked for Dad to show up and show himself, and he didn't respond. And again, mostly I get nothing, or I get, it's none of your business. This time was different. He did answer, and I thought I would share that, and then maybe try something. So we'll see how it goes. So basically, and again, to maybe clarify a little bit, it's often been said that when you talk to God, it's prayer. When He talks to you, it's psychosis. But that is not the way for me. Most of the time, the communication that I get straight from them is like the thought before it precedes words. It is often not in words unless specifically He wants to challenge me on my perception of a meaning of a word, right? Or a belief that I have that's mistaken. So I have to sort of translate, I guess is what I'm saying here. That I have to translate the impressions of what I got. But essentially like this. This is the best way I can put it. Is if you take a step toward me, I will take a step toward you. Right? You move toward me, and I will move toward you. And so again, I see celestial creation saying, I felt nothing, and ask and plead and nothing. And I have no way. It's kind of awkward. Again, I'm not judging anyone's motives. I'm just saying to everyone, like, in that position, check your heart, right? And think about it in the context. If you are in a tough spot, and many people, they say that there's no atheists in foxholes, right? Because we're under duress and we want help. And many people get in a situation where they go, God, if you just get me out of this, then I'll follow you. And then if they do get out of it, then they're like, yeah, okay, I'll do then, and they back up. But many people only look for a relationship with their Creator, or at least to communicate with their Creator. They only pray when they're in dire need, and that's understandable. Many people, again, I found it true that many people have to see a need before they will recognize their need to come. It's very much as we would say, for example, those who have addictions, right? That they have to wait until they get to rock bottom. Before, when they realize that they're powerless and they can't do anything, that they really do have to go into another direction. And most people, unfortunately, do find. I find that they have to find themselves in a position of helplessness and powerlessness till they seek external help. And you kind of have to imagine, if you're on the other end of that, if people only are interested in the relationship based on what you can give to them, that's probably kind of tiresome. When the idea is, it's not about, many people again have this idea of God as some sort of glorified Santa Claus, right? That he's going to give these gifts, and we're supposed to be grateful for the gifts or whatever. But we only ask when we want something, and I think the nature of it is more about, hey Eric, the nature of it is more of a relationship, and less of what's been presented, this idea of abject servitude, but more in the nature of a relationship, and certainly not a relationship. I mean, imagine a kid who only wants to talk to his parents when he wants the car keys or money. That's not really much of a relationship, right? It's kind of a usury situation. So, again, I'm not making any accusations of anyone. I'm not saying, well, that's why. I'm just saying, just check your heart. But also, again, the motivations. Just what are you looking to get out of it, right? What's your motivation? But to that end. Yeah, Winston, that's a good analogy. I've heard that before. This idea that you have a hole in your heart, and it's a God-shaped hole. But yeah, certainly we have a need to be completed, and I believe, just because again, belief, convinced. I don't know how to put it. Through observation and through experience, that we were made for relationship, and not just relationship with each other, but a relationship with our Creator. That we're meant to be in relationship with Him, and we're only fulfilled when we've got that need met, that connection. It's like a light bulb. It's meant to be plugged into the power source, and it remains dark unless it does. And so, this may be somewhat, I don't know, strange and uncomfortable, perhaps for it is a little bit even for me, but it may be strange and uncomfortable for some of you. But if you're willing, here's what I'd like to try today. I would just take a moment, and if you're willing to open your heart and listen very closely in your spirit, and understand that very often it's simply that still small voice. The story, is told of Elijah that he was waiting for a message from God, and he was told to wait until you hear from me. And first there was an earthquake, and God was not in the earthquake. And then there was a tornado, and God was not in the tornado. And then there was a fire, and God was not in the fire. And so then he's in a cave hiding from these things. And then it was then that God appeared to him or spoke to him in the still small voice in his heart, whispering to him. And he was surprised. He had expected God to show up in power. Isn't that what you expect of a supernatural being, right? To show up with power and glory. And so he saw these things of huge power, an earthquake, a whirlwind, and a fire. And God wasn't in any of those things. But he spoke quietly to the heart. And this is very consistent with my own experience. That early on, I had to really listen quietly and closely. The expression in the Scripture says, "Be still and know that I am God." And it is in that silence. And it's very difficult sometimes to get that silent place inside of you, because there's all these voices that are fighting for attention. And even those who try to meditate know this. When you try to get to a place of the kind of the no mind, right, where you quiet the last voice, where you can listen closely, it's very difficult. There are so many things vying for our attention, and many of the inner voices are scrambling for attention. But if you're willing, and if you would like, what I'd like to do is to, for those again who would like to, who are seeking that, is just to be quiet for a moment, and we'll listen closely, and then I'll just I'll ask Dad to show up for you and for me and for all of us, and if you're okay with that, just tell me so in the chat, and I'll be quiet for a minute and let you kind of prepare. You can tell me if you're cool with that. If you go, no, I don't want that, we'll go on from there. But I'll take a sip of my delicious shake, and I'll see what you guys say. Okay. Well, we got at least a couple of people who are cool with that, so the rest of you guys just sit there and shut up, I guess. All right, so I'll just start here. Just if you can, just breathe deeply, close your eyes, relax, and listen as closely as you can with your heart. Dad, I love you so much, and I love that you always hear me, and you hear those whose hearts are focused on you. I have never, ever known you to reject a willing, contrite heart, ever. I also know that there are good people who are honest with me and say that they have never heard you. So I just want to ask right now that you show up for them right now. You put your arms around them, and you touch them, and you whisper their name. Just let them know that you're there. And if they're willing to take a step toward you, you said you would take a step toward them. I appreciate that. You're really good. So, well, that's pretty good. A bird dropped a turd. That's a sign of something. That bird has to take a dump, I guess. But if you're, again, willing to listen in your heart and sense in that space around you the presence of love. And see, I got a message from Cammie. So, no, I know. So, Dad, with each of those people that have taken a step toward you, just, it's my sincere petition and begging that you continue to move closer to them and just spend the evening with them. I've never known him to ignore you if you ask. Just step forward and kind of wave your hand, say, I'm here. Just sit in it for a minute and enjoy the sense of his presence around you. And for those of you um, who still feel ghosted, I guess, again, I just my encouragement to you is consider your heart. If you want that, if you are willing to take a step toward your Creator, again, it's my experience that He will take a step toward you. That's what I think I heard Him say. Um, that's what I got. That's what I got for you today. Um, and I wanted to just take a moment and just ask for for Him to show up for you, and I hope that He did for you. With that, I'm just gonna take a moment and noodle for a little bit, and then I'll come back, and we'll say good evening. wisdom, your butt horror? Okay. um, so there you go, guys. I hope those of you who were seeking were able to find and a light in the darkness. It only takes a single match, a single candle in a darkness to shed some light, and light will flee. With that, I bid you a good evening. I'll see you next time.